Welcome back, everybody, to the DreamHack Grand Prix. We're just about ready for the second semi-final, joined by Firebat this time. Orange versus Zummp, then. I'm not sure it's going to be as quick a series as we just witnessed with Zixo and Espinito. A lot of control-heavy decks in these lineups.
Very control-heavy. Zummp with the greediest decks I think we've seen the entire tournament, featuring Ysera N'Zoth Paladin, which he was actually able to out-greed a Jade Druid with, playing 5 Tyrians, winning the game in his last match.
And do you think he'll be rewarded then with his greed against Orange's lineup? So I'm looking at Orange, he's got Evolve Shaman, Jade Druid, his own N'Zoth Paladin.
Right, that's where the greed pays off, is in the N'Zoth Paladin mirror. Having those additional threats can really help you secure up that matchup quite consistently, actually. And
Zummp actually opting to ban away Orange's Paladin.
Maybe expecting his own Paladin would get banned then.
Potentially, but his Evolve Shaman is going to be banned. Good thought process from Orange. I mean, Evolve Shaman has shown that it's been very strong throughout the tournament, but that does leave the greedy Paladin that you were talking about, Zummp.
Orange has Shaman that can answer that pretty well. We saw it, actually the exact same Shaman list be what took down Zump's Paladin in his previous series. Orange also has Rogue, which traditionally does very well against the Paladin, so it shouldn't really be a problem for him. Zummp needs to be able to try and line up this Mage, I guess, against not the Druid, and then he's fine. So if he can get Orange's Druid out of the way, the Mage is going to be successful against the other 2 decks from Orange. So that's going to try and be the focus there.
So I wonder if Zummp tries to start off with this Freeze Mage then to try and catch anyone out. No, he's going to be starting things off with his Paladin.
Yeah, and this is a trend we've seen from a lot of players. The deck that they feel has the worst matchups across the board is oftentimes the deck they start with. Zump's Paladin, not great against the Shaman, not great against the Rogue, and it's okay against the Druid. We did see it defeat a Jade Druid, but that would not be considered a super favorable matchup. So he's kind of scouting with this Paladin, gaining information, and then kind of responding after that.
So what's the win situation, or how do both of these players win with either of these decks then? So Zummp, very late game orientated, a lot of reactive cards. He's not really going to be plopping anything on the board too early, I don't think. Like, Wild Pyromancer should stay in the hand, right?
Yeah, he's going to be playing very slow, looking to try and clear Orange's minions, limit the amount of draw he can get, extend the game out to a super slow state, and try and exhaust Orange of potential threats and resources. Orange's deck has no Cold Bloods in it. It is instead running the Arcane Giants, so that's damage Zummp can potentially prevent from happening with tools like Aldor Peacekeeper, Equality, and maybe even Sunkeeper Tarim. So he can maybe try and exhaust the damage from Orange, and that's usually the game plan Control Paladins go for.
And Shaku being a nice addition to Orange's Miracle Rogue as well. Some people run it, some people don't. He's only running the 1 Questing Adventurer, and Shaku can just generate some really helpful cards, similarly to Swashbuckler, of course. It can help get you some win conditions that you might not have without Shaku. And again, Zummp is just going to continuously just pass here and wait for something influential that he can actually play.
Yeah, we see him not playing out the tempo Aldor Peacekeeper. He wants to save that to react to a threat and focus on the removal game. He has the Spellbreaker tech in here, which is fantastic tech for a lot of matchups. We saw it work very well for him previously in the Paladin Mirror, but it's also pretty good against Sherazin. You can stop that infinite value generator so that you can actually exhaust the Rogue. Otherwise, Sherazin could be a real problem for him.
Yeah, really good against Sherazin. I mean, Spellbreaker has worked its way into the meta because of, well, the lack of silencers in general ever since Ironbeak Owl. We went through a phase in the meta where there just wasn't silencers anywhere, and the people were like, actually, we need silence back again, and we've seen silences kind of rise once again, thanks to Silence Priest, of course, has helped. But the Spellbreaker, I mean, for its stats, a 4/3, as well as silencing a minion, it is worth throwing in your deck if you're worried about like taunts, for example, if you're running an aggressive deck. But in Zump's situation, it's for this exact time. When something like a Sharon is in played, make sure there's no value. Spike-Rich Steed, of course, is something you wanted to be silencing as well.
Right. And Orange here playing around the Kodo by making sure he swings in with his minion. That is a very common card in the Control Paladin deck lists. And Zummp is running 2 copies of it, so it's not too unlikely for a Stampeding Kodo to be potentially played here. But if he goes for the Stampeding Kodo, then he forgoes the ability to silence the Sherazin, and a 5/3 could be revived for Orange later on. So he may choose to not go for the Stampeding Kodo this turn, deal with the Sherazin with the silence, set up a favorable trade on board. He's got a lot of decisions, really. because ignoring the Shaku does give Trump an additional Paladin. I mean, does give Orange an additional Paladin card.
Did you just say Trump?
I did on accident. And I was trying to say Orange even. I wasn't even trying to say Zummp at that moment, so a little bit of a slip up there. But
Amazing.
yeah.
And Trump's made it to the tournament after all. We're back to 2014.
In spirit, I guess.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
in spirit.
The Zummp Trump. He is going to opt to go for the Kodo here. So he's removing an extra Paladin card from Orange. But the downside is, at some point in the game, this 5/3 will likely be able to come back to life, and he has to deal with that again, which is kind of like a card if you think about it.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, he had the option not to swing there and just let it survive, but then the likelihood is it just trades into the Kodo and dies anyway. So at least he keeps the value of the Kodo onto the board. And for Orange, it's when he wants to trigger this Auctioneer. I would presume it's probably going to be next turn. Of course, he could do it this turn if he would like. Coin out the Auctioneer into Backstab, into Prep, into Eviscerate, into whatever he wants to use. And maybe he's forced to.
Rather aggressive into a True Silver. I don't think he's forced to do anything here. The Zump's not trying to kill him. The Stampeding Kodo hits for 3. It's going to be okay.
He's going to be all right.
Yeah. He has Vilespine Slayers to react to Spike Ridge Steeds if he wants to. So not overreacting to the board. He is going to opt to kill it, which seems fine. And just stall out until he feels he can comfortably gather enough cards with Gadgets and Auctioneer.
And knowing Zump's deck as well, and knowing how late game it is, he can be relatively confident in thinking, well, what's the chances of him actually playing something that's influential next turn anyway?
Yeah, he has 1 minion that could come down on 6. I guess 2. He has a Karen Bloodhoof and a Sunkeeper Tarim. They both could come down here. You know, Karen Bloodhoof being a little bit annoying, but you would be happy to see a Sunkeeper Tarim on an empty board like this.
Zummp doesn't want to have an empty board. He does play the Pyromancer, which is somewhat interesting. And now Orange is going to opt to play the Auctioneer.
Yeah, he's got a good backstab target because of the extension of the Pyromancer there, but Zummp really valuing trying to pressure his opponent.
And he will be able to revive the Sherazin as well by doing so with the Auctioneer here, as well as drawing into, of course, his win condition. Those Arcane Giants will be coming at some point. And he's seen one Pyromancer.
He's going to go for the Prep here, it looks like, before the Hallucination.
And now you're forced to Eviscerate? I guess you're not forced to. You could still hallucinate, but it just doesn't feel fantastic.
Right. Would like to maybe see just the Hallucination first. Maybe you could prep what you get out of the Hallucination.
That's true. Dino Size.
That's
okay.
a threat.
Okay.
Yeah, if your opponent's trying to exhaust all of your threats, take the biggest card and jam it at their face.
Now the draw train keeps rolling for Orange. I think he'll stop. I don't think he'll use that second Eviscerate. Zummp may now use this Spellbreaker to silence the Sherazin.
Yeah, and then just weapon down this Gadgets and Auctioneer. Still has 3 mana left to work with. Could choose to maybe develop a Doomsayer. It's not really great. Could try and play the Aldor Peacekeeper to just neutralize the damage from Sherazin. Slow that down a little bit.
There's not going to be that many opportunities for him to play the Doomsayer and really get the value out of it.
And hey, if it goes off, he probably wins the game because he gets to stabilize with an empty board Ragnaros Lightlord. It might bait out a Vilespine Slayer, which allows his Ragnaros Lightlord and Primordial Drake to actually make something happen. So,
I mean, Zummp probably knows there is an answer. He's just seen how many cards have drawn. Fan of Knives, as we can see, will be a perfect way to answer the Doomsayer.
Yeah, it allows Orange to potentially make the mistake of trying to tempo out with the Vilespine Slayer, or maybe not even a mistake because he has the second one. He might be able to actually push the tempo enough to just close out the game. Because the Vilespine Slayer killing an 07 is like dealing 7 additional damage because you don't have to sink your Sherazin attack into it and your dagger. And since you do have the backup one, it might not be bad.
I suppose alternatively, he's just going to SI this Spellbreaker down and then run his weapon and Sherazin into the face.
Well, he's going to kill the Doomsayer, yeah.
Into the Doomsayer's face.
Yeah,
that's what
the Doomsayer's face, sure. Yeah, so those were the 2 lines there. There's the one aggressive line of use the Vilespine Slayer for maximum damage, maximum tempo, or the line of hold back your important resources for the bigger threats. And I think this is the correct line to take between those 2.
And now this isn't really a board that you want to be putting that Ragnaros Lightlord down onto.
No.
I guess you could, but...
Lightlord has 8 health, that is 8 power, and the tempo swing of a Vilespine Slayer with both of these minions being able to just press face after it is a real bummer. You could try and set up for the Primordial Drake with the Spike Ridge Steed this turn. Even if the Spike Ridge Steed gets Vilespine Slayered here, then the Stegodon lives afterwards to try and help set up that Primordial Drake. So it's a 2-layered defense system.
The Stegodon may be traded into by both minions as well, essentially giving it Wind Fury, and then, as you said, yeah, the Drake will just swoop on in and clear up the board accordingly.
Yeah, that's the hope anyway. It's a great opportunity for some Dino Size action.
Oh, Dino Size. How important is this matchup for Orange to win, then, with this Rogue? If he was to lose, how much of an advantage does Zummp gain in this series?
Well, if he was to lose, then Zummp doesn't have to queue up his Mage right away. Then the Shaman comes out to counter the Paladin. Then Zummp gets to queue up his Mage into the Shaman. And then Orange counter queues with the Druid against the Mage. And then Zummp gets to counter queue the Druid with the Rogue and is favorable in the series. So, important.
Very important, then.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been the way it's gone for several of the matches in Last Hero Standing that the person who wins the first game then gets countered, and then they follow up with a counter for counter for counter, and then they end up winning the series 3-2. Of course, it's not always as simple as that, but we have seen it happen several times. First Vilespine comes down for Orange to start to put a little bit of pressure onto the Paladin now.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah, sorry, was there not enough emphasis there? A little, a lot.
And that's going to be lethal for Orange. The Dino Size.
Dino Size is going to be able to go for the surprise attack. Zummp was not expecting it. He's got a Patches as well. In addition, just to rub salt in the wounds. And yeah, this is really positive start for Orange. You'll be extremely happy just picking up that Dino Size. And you did say the Miracle Rogue particularly had a real good chance against this Paladin anyway.
Yeah, exceptional chance against the Paladin. This is kind of the expected result. And now Zummp has the choices. Does he want to try and counter the Miracle Rogue with the Miracle Rogue Mirror, or does he want to try and counter it with the Mage?
Isn't Zummp running his own Quest Rogue?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
so Quest Rogue.
So, yeah, he can use Quest Rogue to try and counter it, or he can go with the Mage. The Mage is the better deck on paper against it, but the way the lineups kind of pan out, if you queue the Mage now, the Mage gets countered by the Druid, and then you respond with the Rogue, and then the Rogue gets countered by the Shaman at the end of the day, so it ends up being a bit more awkward for you.
So we're thinking he'd rather queue up the Quest Rogue here then?
I think so.
Save the Freeze Mage for a little bit later?
I think you want to try and get that Mage up against the Shaman. But it depends kind of how you feel about the matchups. I'd say it's pretty close either way. He did end up picking the Rogue, so that is his thought process. This is so he can try and preserve the Mage to go up against the Shaman. The Rogue is slightly favored against the Miracle Rogue because Orange is not running the Cold Blood version. He's running the Arcane Giants version, which oftentimes struggles at bursting down the Quest Rogue in time. So Zummp still has a favorable matchup. The Mage is obviously a more favorable matchup for him, but he wants to save that to be able to respond to the Shaman.
Relatively standard Quest Rogue as well from what I can see from Zummp. It does look like he's actually running double backstab, so I say standard.
Right, and then that could be, sometimes people play the Elemental in that slot, the Tar Creeper there. So, yeah, there's usually like 2 flexible cards in Quest Rogue, and it's not too uncommon to see double backstab, 1 backstab, 1 Tar Creeper, stuff like that.
Certainly when Quest Rogue was initially brought to its crazy prowess that it was, backstabs were there, and then the Tar Creepers came into effect purely because of the aggro, but no Tar Creepers for Zummp in this deck. Everything else looks fairly standard. He's got the Swashbucklers as well, just as Zixo did, and we saw the damage that can be done by those bad boys by pulling some extra cards.
Not really a great hand, though. Only 1 bounce effect for Zummp at the moment.
No, but it seems with Quest Rogue is you look at these hands and you say it's not great, and then suddenly they pull another bounce effect
and then it becomes
into another one, and then suddenly it's great. And that's the scary factor about Quest Rogue.
Right. Orange hand on the other side looks actually pretty fantastic. He could even get Shares out this turn if he wanted to. Be super aggressive with it. With the backstab and the prep and the patches in his hand, he threatens to revive it very easily. And taking as much tempo, doing as much damage as you can, as fast as you can, is very important.
It has been steady, actually just opts to use the Shaku, and Shaku will be generating more cards.
Right.
Refilling that hand. And well, there's another bounce back effect, and suddenly Zump's hand looks, yeah, it's amazing. So he could opt to just go for what? The Celsi Deckhand if he wanted, or Glacial Shard. He may want to keep Celsi Deckhand just because of patches being drawn.
He likely wants to complete the quest on the Glacial Shard. So he's got the ability to go Glacial Shard, Youthful Brewmaster this turn if he wants to. The problem with it is you don't actually freeze anything relevant, so you're not slowing down the game. The upside of it is you're getting that mana utilization out of the way so you can try and complete the quest a little bit faster. But he's valuing slowing down his opponent rather than completing his quest potentially faster if he draws additional bounce effects.
Yeah, he knows if he can complete the quest when he's at a reasonable life total and the board isn't fantastic from Orange, he should be able to win the game.
Wow, coin 4-drop into 4-drop is really good in a deck that runs 1 4-drop.
And Zarol also will help generate extra tools to revive a Sherazin that gets killed as well.
Yeah, they just synergize with each other fantastically. But they're all going to be frozen.
They're all going to be frozen, and then after all the bounce back effects, all Zummp needs is one more actually, and then that prep into Crystal Core is going to be juicy too. I suppose there is the option of using the Vanish as the final bounce back effect in conjunction with the preparation.
Yeah, he can just use the Vanish just straight up with a Shadow Stepped Glacial Shard at one point.
Yeah.
So, trying to set that up seems ideal. It just depends how much damage you want to stop when you want to start doing it. I wouldn't be too surprised to see him go Glacial Shard, Youthful Brewmaster, Glacial Shard. Just freeze both of the minions, get that mana out of the way, because it is really expensive to utilize Youthful Brewmaster, and this is decent enough freeze value for the matchup.
And he just Shadow Step back as well.
Or he could just kill this, actually, with the South Sea Deckhand. That's probably what he's thinking about. You lose a lot of the value in your hand, because that's 2 5/5s you have to expend to do it, to kill the Shaku. So he is going to opt to just hold on to that Shadow Step out the Glacial Shard.
Play the patient game.
Yeah, he's definitely taking his time with this quest rogue. I think that's good. He's guaranteeing the value out of a lot of his battle cries, guaranteeing the value out of his patches later on. He's at 28 life. He doesn't have too much pressure on him, so it seems like the right thing to do.
So following it up, Zummp next turn, I mean, goes for Glacial Shard, and he's going to freeze probably either Sherazin or Shaku again. Probably Sherazin and then kill off the Shaku. And then if he really wanted to, if he doesn't draw any other bounce backs, could prep into Vanish. Maybe slightly overkill. May want to keep the prep for when the quest is actually completed.
Yeah, you could just do nothing this turn. Dagger face, re-dagger. And then next turn, Glacial Shard and Vanish. Or he could try and accelerate it with the utilization of the prep. Okay, and then he can complete it now with the Glacial Shard if he wants to, and then be able to play Deckhand plus Quest next turn, putting 10/10 worth of charge in play. Or you can hold on to the Glacial Shard, try and maximize the number of 5/5s, because he does have to kind of discard a 5/5 a lot of the time if he plays out the Glacial Shard this turn.
Yeah, naturally you'd be thinking, well, why aren't you playing a Swashbuckler? Why aren't you trying to refill your hand? But of course, it's that patches. It's that 5/5 patches you want to be keeping in your deck to be able to throw that onto the board at once.
And he feels his hand is so weak, he wants to even guarantee that the Glacial Shard is going to be a 5/5. Says he's got enough health to do it. He just needs to make sure he has enough 5/5s to actually close the game before he gets outvalued.
Because there's a potential just 10 damage coming straight out of the hand from Celsi plus patches. You'll be able to freeze whatever Orange puts on the board if Orange is only putting 1 minion on the board.
Which isn't that unlikely that Orange can't really play too many minions. You know, he had a 3-drop and a 4-drop out. He's on 5 mana. So it's a bit awkward to really develop that strong of a board here for Orange.
Yeah, and patches are already in hand as well, so he's not going to be able to draw it from the Swashbuckler. I mean, what can Orange pick up here that would actually help in this matchup from this Swashbuckler? I can't think of anything significant.
Edwin Van Cleef's pretty good, but it gets frozen.
Yeah, Zummp in a really good spot. Of course, it's going to come down to what he draws as well. But usually when you're putting down copious amounts of 5/5s, it doesn't really matter. That's the point of why this deck is so incredibly scary. Shaku does mean that it is a minion that can't be frozen. So I like this route from Orange, recognizing what's going to come forth.
Yeah, He knew exactly what Zummp was going to do. Quite predictable that he was going to be playing the Glacial Shard and then completing the Crystal Core.
Here we go.
Damage control now for Orange. Trying to put a foot onto the board as well as answering this first 5-5, as well as the incoming waves of 5-5s as well. No second Varspine Slayer.
He can discover a lot of Cold Bloods. He's got the double hallucination.
Tradition's Blade plus the Toxin. No, that's not really going to help. It's just going to have to search for more answers. And of course, he's not particularly desperate to clear this 5-5 immediately, but he knows that it is a worry, and there's always a potential for lethal next turn. That's always the scary factor.
Ooh, Shadow Rager is so good. I didn't think I was going to say that ever in my life, but it's true. It's so much damage. 3 mana, deal 5 to face. The Quest Rogue does not have a way to interact with the stealth on it. It's super powerful.
I remember playing Shadow Rager in a deck when Quest Rogue was first good. I remember an aggro kind of piratey rogue was around. I think Sotil may have built it that also ran the Shadow Rager just to try and contest the board.
In the Asian regions for HCT, in the last metagame, pre-Ungaro metagame, Shadow Rager was included in the Stealth Rogue. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a deck. It's been a card that's seen competitive play, which is a bit surprising.
And there's a bounce back effect already for Zummp as well, so he can immediately jam some damage, and the fact he can use these Swashbucklers to look for even more. Well, this Assassin's not really going to be doing too much.
The Weasel Tunneler is fantastic. It's a great minion for you and a terrible one for your opponent, which is awesome. So you get to add garbage to their deck and play a 5-5 for 1 mana.
Zummp just doing what he can to deal with the majority of the board and probably bounce back. Okay, bouncing back the freeze. I like this. Just to freeze up the Sherazin, the one thing that can actually trade with the 5-5s on the board. Set up for lethal next turn with the sheer amount of damage as well. And now it's saying to Orange, all right, what are you going to do? Come at me, bro.
There's not a lot he can do.
Nope. Zummp should be tying this one up 1-1. Depending on what Orange could find, I suppose a Vanish would at least shove everything back.
And then it comes all right back down, though.
Yeah, it
all costs 1 mana, except for the one guy that costs 2.
It's just delaying the inevitable.
Yeah. Edwin Van Leaf.
Personal favorite. Speaking of flavor text.
It's just a little too small.
Excuse me. Couldn't avoid that one. There we go. Speaking of not being able to avoid it.
Yeah.
If we just wait
to avoid it either.
No, you couldn't. 1-1 now. And Zummp will get the win with his Quest Rogue. So Orange is left with his Evolve Shaman and his Jade Druid. Yeah. So naturally,
you have to
you queue up his Evolve Shaman?
Yeah. Yep. You can't queue the Jade Druid into a Quest Rogue. That's one of the worst matchups for the Jade Druid deck. So we'll most likely see the Shaman come out here. The Shaman, it's not super favored against the Quest Rogue, but it is, I would say, slightly favored just because of the aggressive nature of the deck. It can get on the board very quickly, threaten a lot of damage with Bloodlust, and the Quest Rogue has a hard time dealing with a lot of really wide boards.
Yeah, well, we saw it earlier with Zixo versus Espamito. Zixo was running the Evolve Shaman, and it was looking like he was in a good position, but because Espamito was able to Mimic Pod into the Glacial Shard, he was able to constantly freeze those minions, and the Bloodlust wasn't able to push enough damage through.
Yeah, Glacial Shard is a pretty fantastic card in the matchup to slow down a lot of the... You wouldn't think it would be too good because Shaman's so wide on the board, but once the Flame Tongue comes down, if you can't remove it, it's one of the best ways to stop Flame-Tongued up minions from hitting you in the face and kind of negate that buff.
That's a nice pickup for Orange to really push the damage early. He needs to build up a wide board nice and early on. Really wants Bloodlust by 5 and wants to try and win this early before Zummp gets the chance to A, complete the quest, and B, draw into his Glacial Shards and bounce back effects. Bile Fins as well to just put walls in the way. But all the tools are available for Zummp in terms of searching for more cards. Just needs those bounce backs.
Right, but He kept not bounce backs in his hand. He kept the aggressive cards, the removal cards, the backstab, the swashbuckler because it pulls patches to give you tempo early on. He just wants to slow down the game, keep orange off the board as long as possible. Once the quest rogue gets to the 6 or 7 mana point and vanishes become live, they usually try and complete the quest with vanish in this matchup and capitalize on the inability for Shaman to kind of deal with their entire board getting removed because they can't do anything without the board.
Yeah, Vanish was very prominent in the last series as well. It really helped swing that matchup. I mean, Shaman can do well to refill in most cases, but it depends when the Vanish comes down. If it does come down on 6, then it can be difficult for the Shaman to put any more than, what, 3 minions on board.
Right.
Sometimes you can get 5 if it's Doppelgangster into Bloodsail Corsair, but then you haven't got the Evolve. I think Zump's in a relatively good position. It's just going to be a case of Orange trying to go as wide as possible, but he doesn't really have the tools to do so. Mana Tide Totem is at least good on 3.
Yeah, he expects to get multiple draws off it as it's not really contested on board at the moment. So, and that's one of the things he really needs right now. He discounts his thing from below and works towards finding those necessary cards to flood the board. He needs his Fireflies, he needs his Primal Fin Totems, he needs the Bloodlust as well. So, just a lot of stuff to try and find. Primal Fin Totem is really sick in the matchup, though.
It may be a case as well for Orange to take the initiative at some point when his board is wide to just evolve it. And hope there's no Vanish, hope to be able to push even more damage doing so like that.
Yeah, that's a sketchy way to do it. I really dislike it when the Shamans evolve because then when the Vanish comes down, they have a really hard time repopulating the board. It's oftentimes really good to have 1 costing minions in this matchup as the Rogue doesn't run Fan of Knives and usually has a pretty small board, so they can't trade with a lot of minions at once. If you can populate the board with 7 minions, Bloodlust is lethal a lot of the time. So evolving early, I think, although you get better stats, is really detrimental to your ability to win off Bloodlust.
I think if you can evolve early enough where you're not too worried about Vanish, for example, if you can do it, well, on a turn 3, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can say before there's a prep option, that's very difficult, but just before turn 6, there's definitely warrant for it. I agree with you, and I think it's very risky. However, sometimes you really just have to take the aggressive stance. It was what Zixo tried against Espamito in the previous series. He went for an early evolve. He had a very threatening board, but it was actually a top deck into Vanish that ended up punishing him. So exactly as you're saying, the Vanish just was too strong in the end, and speak of the devil, there it is.
Yeah, when a card's a 2 of in your deck, you usually find it by turn 6. There's another Rogue deck built completely around that principle. And then the Miracle Rogue with finding gadgets and Auctioneer on time, so the Vanish is usually there. So evolving is potentially really expensive. But if you are losing the fight for the board, then sometimes you just kind of have to do it.
Is Zummp just seeing this Primal Fin Totem as not worth backstabbing? Looks like he is.
That is interesting. He's more worried about Flame Tongue Totem, I guess.
Must be.
Yeah. He says, you know what, the Primal Fin's too slow anyway at generating the board.
Stonehill Defender can defend it in his eyes. I wish I hadn't said that, but that's what he's going to be doing. Along with Jade Claws as well. He's starting to go pretty wide.
Yeah, that is really interesting that he doesn't want to take down the Primal Fin Totem. Saving the backstab for higher priority targets, obviously, but it's just a strange evaluation of the situation.
And Orange actually opting now to get the thing from below on. He wants to start pushing some damage. I don't really blame him.
Right. He has no Bloodlust in hand yet, and he needs to start whacking away at some limited time to do so.
But now everything starts to get frozen. And this is the worry for the Shaman, to be honest. And it's where we might see an early evolve come out.
Still lacking 1 Bounce of Fest to be able to complete the quest.
So I think you use 1 here just to freeze the thing from below. You don't want to take the 5 damage, you bounce it back, and you wait for next turn.
For sure. 5 is too big of a number. You do not want to be taking that to the dome. But the decision not to kill the Primal Fin. Bloodlust starts becoming real really quick.
It does, and no way to get through the thing from below either.
Yeah, and these 1 costing Murlocs, it's not like they go away. Like, once you vanish, he's going to be able to repopulate them all on the board the next turn. They only cost 1 mana, so he's going to have 7 minions again. You don't have Fan of Knives in your deck. That's strange.
Manatee Totem is very welcome for Orange, as you would say. You'd love to see that if you're an Orange fan.
Yeah, it's not a bad one for sure. Wants to try and just put more minions in play.
I'm worried with this line he might evolve.
Yeah, I'm worried as well. I'm just not a fan of these early evolves. They always seem to get punished by the vanishes. Like, your board right now is a bunch of minions that if vanish happens, you can play them down for 1 mana. Thing from Below costs 3 for him now. If you totem, it costs 2. So, like, Thing from Below is the perfect anti-vanish card. So evolving it into anything else is a real bummer.
Usually when you have something like a Primal Fin Totem or a Manatee Totem, you don't really go for the evolve, so I don't think he will in this situation.
Yeah.
I'm just going to trade and keep this pretty threatening board, and it is a board that keeps generating 1/1s because didn't backstab it earlier.
And it just keeps constantly threatening lethal with Bloodlust as the game goes on. Which is great if you draw the Bloodlust, but if you have one of those games where Bloodlust is just both copies bottom 10, it's a real bummer.
So Zummp can complete the quest this turn. Glacial Shard into Brewmaster into another Glacial Shard.
Yeah.
Freeze Thing from Below again.
And he lives through Bloodlust while doing so. Even lived through Bloodlust Flametongue Totem, so he should have no problem staying alive while doing it. Seems like the play.
I mean, when you've got a chance to complete the quest, usually you take it. That's for certain. It's where he goes afterwards. It's whether his next turn is a definite vanish, but as you are quite rightly saying, you're going to be vanishing a board that is just going to repopulate instantly.
Yep.
And yes, okay, it's all well and good. You're going to be able to complete the quest and put a couple of minions on next turn, but Bloodlust can be a thing that is very likely.
Yeah, so he holds back one of the Glacial Shards so he can try and freeze something and complete the quest on the following turn to play around Bloodlust while completing it.
And there is the Bloodlust as well for Orange. It's whether he wants to even push. I don't like it, but I'm gonna pose the question to you anyway. Do you push 14 damage to face now, or at least push some damage as well as trading, with the likelihood of potentially drawing a second Bloodlust with a lesser board later?
No, I don't like that. The problem is these minions on the board are going to turn into 5/5s, so you kind of really want to deal with at least one of them. The Brewmaster is going to turn into a 5/5 and trade into a 1/4, so that's not that big of a deal. But at least getting the Glacial Shard out of the way, populating up the board. It wouldn't have been too sad to see a Psychotron out there to threaten more power with the Bloodlust, but if you only push for 14, your opponent's still at 10 life, and they're going to be taking the board away from you. And you're going to not be able to recover it from that position.
So with this, Zummp can now Glacial Shard, complete the quest, vanish if he wants.
Well, he can't vanish. Everything comes back. And then he's stuck in the same exact situation as before. So if he Glacial Shards complete the quest, is he dead? He gets to freeze the 5/5, kill off the 1/4. He can even backstab something to then remove that from being able to get power with Bloodlust and dagger something.
Can also Shadow Step back a Glacial Shard as well, freeze something else.
Sure, if he feels he needs to. Yeah. Oh, he can't actually dagger anything because of the taunts. Right. But he can remove the 1/1 with the backstab. So there's going to be 2 totems, the Primal Fin, and the Manatide. It's only 4 minions, so it's a 12 damage Bloodlust. He can even leave up the 1/1 if he wants to. It's still not lethal with Bloodlust.
So Zummp will be feeling relatively comfortable.
16 damage with Bloodlust. It's a lot, but as long as you're away from dying by 4 against Shaman, it's usually pretty fine. You just don't want to fall into the trap where they can Bloodlust you, then Jade Lightning you the turn after, or hit you twice with Jade Claws. So I like the patience here, knowing he's not dead to Bloodlust.
Could push 18 though, and that 18 does mean that you've got the potential of hero power into Jade Lightning.
Yeah, I like pushing 18 here. I think it's a pretty good time to do it. I don't think you're going to get a bigger bloodlust than this throughout the course of the entire game. This backstab usage, it could have came out right there to try and stop this from being as effective as it is. I'm very curious what he's been saving this backstab for the entire game.
My only thought is Flame Tongue Totem. That is my only thought. The fact that he didn't use it earlier against the Primal Fin surprised me anyway. Looks like Orange is going to go down more of a defensive route and not push all this damage to face.
Okay.
In fact, it's going to try and clear some of this board with Jade Claws.
Sure.
I guess just getting rid of the Glacial Shard is good enough for him. Because the Glacial Shard is such a nuisance. He's going for the Evolve now.
Zummp really does not have too many minions remaining. He's only got the Wicked Witch Doctor. So Orange's defensive line really prevents a lot of value out of the Vanish.
I mean, it is a Wicked Witch Doctor into a Mimic Pod into a Backstab, which does generate minions that are 5/5s.
Right. That's.
But there is all this pressure on the board that you really have to be vanishing.
Yeah, he's got to vanish this turn. Get that War Golem out of here. But yeah, having that Wicked Witch Doctor, I guess that's why he's been saving the backstab this whole time. Really wants to turn it into a 5/5 later on. So he's been holding that all the way since turn 3. Setting up to be able
perfect
to
timing. Doppelgangster off the top. Doppelgangster into Evolve. Could be huge. Even playing the Ferryman first, it looks like, to get a 3-drop on the board as well. It's great timing. He's saying, well, what's the chances of another Vanish? You've got to answer it yet again.
That's tough to beat.
That's a possible 8 damage to the face. That's no Vanish either. He's got a Mimic Pod chance into Vanish.
He's going to need a lot of taunt totems. But then they're going to get devolved.
That's one. Ugh. So you backstab into Novice Engineer, into bounce the Novice Engineer back for another taunt totem. That's another taunt totem.
The problem is this devolve, but it is impressive that he's getting all these taunt totems. A prep Mimic Pod? More taunt totems. Look at that.
No way.
Wow.
No way. Of course, yeah, the Devolve is just going to turn them into wisps.
Ah, not another taunt totem. Unlucky.
I like 5/5 taunts.
This backstab's been the saddest backstab.
This backstab, I like, it's not been given any love from Zummp, let's be honest. He's not even playing it now. Like, finally.
He's going for it. He's going for it. Okay.
Finally giving it some love. 3 out of 5 are taunt totems, but the Devolve is going to allow Orange to push damage through. Little old Wispies will be big old Wispies with 5/5s. But who cares, providing you can push damage for the face. Of course, target dummy not a thing anymore. So nothing to worry about for Orange, as he will get the win with his Evolve Shaman. 1 win away from the grand final. And Zummp just has his Freeze Mage left. So Orange may be feeling very good about this. The fact he's got the Jade Druid left, if this Freeze Mage can beat the Evolve Shaman.
Right, and this Freeze Mage has some techs in it that can help it be able to beat Jade Druid. It's not strictly a Freeze Mage. He is running Mana Worms, as well as Firelands Portal instead of Blizzards. So it's a very aggressive burn mage from Zummp. It's definitely a hybrid between the Discover Mage and the Freeze Mage.
He's got a counterspell in there as well. 2 Acolytes, double Ice Block, double Volcanic. Okay, so it's closer to Discover rather than Freeze.
Well, it's got double Frost Nova, double Doomsayer, double Acolyte of Pain.
So it's like a hybrid mage.
Right, yeah, it's got the whole Freeze Mage. It's got Archmage Antonitis. Yeah, no Medivh. He is just only focused on the burn plan with his Discover Mage, making it play out very Freeze Mage-esque.
And double Volcanic, well, 1 Volcanic Potion would suggest it could do pretty well against an Evolved Shaman as well.
Yeah, it does fantastically against Evolved Shaman, a deck that has no healing and gets really caught up against counter spells and ice blocks and just the freezes in general. So he should be able to burn out over the top most of the time. Not hitting his Mana Worm or Arcanologist, though, is pretty painful, as you want those minions to fight for the board early on. Deny Shaman from snowballing it. Yeah,
Zummp could do with some board clear as well. Yes, okay, he's got that Frost Nova, but for Orange, if he can kind of tempo out quite early here with Primal Fin Totem, Bloodsail Corsair, Jade Claws, into then a Bloodlust, there's a lot of potential damage coming very quickly. if there's no removal from Zummp.
He doesn't have removal yet. Primordial Glyph could get him something to interact with this Primal Fin Totem. A lot of times in this matchup, you want to be looking for AoE off the Primordial Glyph, though. But it seems really bad to just ping a 1/1.
What to do?
Seems like you want to do something.
Frostbolt's good.
That's a good one.
That deals with the Primal Fin.
Ice Block's also a very good card.
Shatter, however, not so much.
Shatter, not so much. But the Ice Block allows you to play Ice Block and then Medivh's Valet the following turn. Your opponent gets one additional 1/1, but you get an Ice Block effect. That's kind of the difference there between the Ice Block and the Frostbolt. So I much prefer the Ice Block to the Frostbolt.
I'm not entirely surprised as well, because we did see Zummp not value Primal Fin Totem as a threat in the last game with his backstab, and clearly he just thinks Primal Fin Totem's not a threat in this either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one extra 1/1's not that big of a deal when you get an entire extra turn later on in the game, so you take those trades.
It also does allow him to activate Medivh's Valet, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So now he can just kill off the Primal Fin Totem anyway.
Yeah, the future Medivh's Valet will be active as well.
Alternative is what? You don't just counterspell here, do you?
Not usually, I don't think.
What are you counterspelling? Okay.
Apparently you do.
All right, then.
Huh.
What 2-mana spell are you counterspelling?
There are none. You're just setting it up for the future turns, I imagine?
You're setting it up for a Bloodlust.
For Jade Lightning in the future?
You're also saying, I mean, I might be able to activate my Medivh's Valet next turn with something that's not Ice Block? I don't know.
Well, yeah, the counter spell is going to stick. Orange isn't playing a spell on 2 mana there. So now you can go Medivh's Valet ping, and your opponent can't Jade Lightning your Medivh's Valet. So you try and force your opponent to have to trade in minions on board to it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some logic to it.
So Jade Lightning is what he was avoiding.
But yeah, he really disrespects Primal Fin Totem. He does not care how many 1/1s his opponent gets, which is interesting. We might see him continue ignoring it and try and fill Orange's board up completely, which would be hilarious. And then Orange can't develop things. Maybe that's a plan? No, clearly not. He's taking out the Primal Fin Totem now, but his Medivh's Valet is protected from the Jade Lightning.
Orange will, of course, have a read that this could be a counterspell. He knows it's in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
So he may see his Jade Lightning as too much of a risk. Can just combine Bloodsail Corsair with his own Jade Claws, with the patches coming out, to clear this Medivh's Valet. If he wants to clear it, he may not. That's putting the Stonehill Defender in the way. May allow him just to send all this damage to face if he wanted.
Man, the dream could happen. Could counterspell a Bloodlust.
How much of a surprise would it be if in the final we had Zummp versus Espamito? Is that a final anyone called, realistically?
There's a lot of Spanish players that were tweeting at me that Espamito is really good.
True.
And up and coming and would make it to the finals. Or would win the whole tournament. So some people in Spain called that.
I mean, it's good. It's good to see a rise of players as well. Mm-hmm. If there are people that are well aware of these players succeeding, it's not like they're just random players that have turned up and got lucky.
Zummp holds back the Ice Block here. He had 1 mana to be able to play it. He does not want to reveal to Orange that this is a counterspell. If 2 secrets are up, then it's more likely to be a counterspell because the only 2 secrets in Zump's deck, counterspell and Ice Block.
Yep.
But even though this spell is off Glyph, it makes Orange worry about it more. He really wants to try and counterspell a Bloodlust. That's why I think he did the secret when he did, because it wasn't very suspicious or obvious that it was counterspell. It's really hard to tell. It seems like it'd be more likely to be Ice Block in that scenario, because you're just shoring up your activation of Medivh's Valet.
Maybe time to start freezing this board now from Zummp.
But he doesn't have to worry yet. I guess he does. There could potentially be Evolve plus Bloodlust. Evolve to break the counterspell. But then if it's not counterspell and you try and go Evolve Bloodlust, then you've just evolved your board and cannot use the Bloodlust. So Orange would have to take a gamble and be able to read that it's counterspell in that instance.
And what does he value here? Board clear or burn? Well, Flame Strike's hard not to take.
With the 2 Ice Blocks, he has 6, 12, 22 damage with the Pyroblast. So he's really close to being able to kill orange. With the fireball, he has the Alexstrasza burn plan. So if he can stall till Alexstrasza, he can kill him in 1 turn after that. So he has the ice block on 7, or the Frost Nova on 7, the ice block on 8. Yeah, he needs 1 more freeze in the sequence. But yeah, he's looking to try and just stall out till Alexstrasza at this point. And if he's able to get there, he wins the game the turn after. So I expect him to space out these freezes here. Oh no, he's actually responding to the threats. Interesting.
Zummp responding to threats?
Mm-hmm.
It's new. If he can catch a Bloodlust here, Zummp will be thrilled. I'm not sure Orange will play into it, though. Although we did see Orange play into a Repentance earlier, didn't we, today?
Yeah.
Kind of muddled his secrets up a little bit.
Well, I took a risk off the Ivory Knight secret. Or just missed it. Judging by his facial reaction, it seems like he just misread.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the secret timing from Zummp is so weird and not normal. The way he played out that counterspell. You don't play counterspell out on 3 in this matchup. A lot of times people try and set it up to guarantee that it lines up or guarantee that it makes using the Bloodlust awkward. So just throwing it out there all willy-nilly like that makes everyone think it's ice block. So sometimes playing the secret just very secretly, it's pretty good.
It's a very clever play from Zummp, and not entirely surprised. He has been playing extremely smart for the entire tournament.
I wouldn't hate seeing a Devolve just come out here by Orange just in case. It's not a card that you're going to get any value out of in the game. But he's saving it. Next turn he can Devolve and Bloodlust in the same turn.
It's whether Zummp has that read as well. If it's turn 7, there is that possibility he can just test with essentially a dead card. So maybe I need to Frost Nova this.
Okay. Well, Zump's win condition at this point is to stall till turn 10. And then on turn 10, he gets to go, even if his ice block gets popped, he goes Alexstrasza ice block, and then he's hoping at that point he's either found the second Medivh's Valet or one of his 2 Frost Bolts, and then he can 15 in 1 turn.
So Orange here, I mean, potentially is looking at popping this block in his eyes if he was to play the Bloodsail Corsair into Bloodlust, but that would play into Counterspell.
He has the Evolve.
If he evolves first, he just wins the game.
Yeah, but it's hard to make that read on what the secret is. And if he doesn't do this, a lot of the time Zump's sequence leads towards lethal. Because he has that 1 mana ice block that he can play after getting popped. So
this would be such a good read from Orange if he does evolve.
He's not going to get the read there.
Let's say it's such a difficult read.
The awkward counterspell timing. Like at the time on that turn 3, counterspell was not the best play. But really worked out well for him, and he's able to save the ice block at the 1 mana to play alongside Alexstrasza in the future. So
and there's a Flame Strike as well, which may just put this game to bed and may see us go to 2-2. Flame Strike plus ice block seems pretty nice here.
Well, no, you don't want to play the 1 mana ice block. It's very bad to play the 1 mana ice block. That's a turn 10 thing.
We could just Flame Strike.
You can Flame Strike, yes, but don't play the 1 mana ice block. It's huge not to play that because you're going to set up your regular ice block, and then you don't even have to worry about freezing even if you get popped, because then you have the ability to Alexstrasza and re-ice block in the same turn. So if you ever get to the point where you can do 15 in 1 turn, you win the game. And it's not that unlikely to get to that point.
By freezing as well, it means that Orange doesn't have the option of a Doppelgangster into Evolve to the following turn, which could always be awkward for Zummp. And you can just follow up next turn with a Frost, with a Flame Strike. So
yeah, he can
do whatever he likes really at this point.
Since his block isn't even getting popped, he can honestly just follow up with Alexstrasza. He's got the world in front of him now. I mean, Orange needed to get lethal that turn. He needed to read the secret correctly there. And he had a 50-50 to be able to do it. Either it's Counterspell or Ice Block. Well, I guess not 50-50 because there's 2 Ice Blocks, 1 Counterspell. So he took the, statistically most likely thing. Most likely it's Ice Block.
And that was all down to the play from Zummp. Zummp played it on that turn 3. And Orange would have naturally said, okay, that's an Ice Block. Why on earth would you be playing a Counterspell? And then Zummp, of course, has opted not to play that Ice Block that whole time. He took that risk of saying, I don't believe you've read this. I think I've outsmarted you.
Yeah. This is very well played by him, and now the Alexstrasza sets up for the lethal. He's got the ability to go Ice Block plus Medivh's Valet into double Fireball the turn after killing Orange. Orange can potentially evolve into friendly bartender. Get some healing. He could get just an entire field of friendly bartenders.
Wow.
And really regain all of his life.
Then the whole world would entirely be in front of Zummp, and he might tear that down.
He could get 3 friendly bartenders potentially here, allowing him to heal for 3 health per turn. Zummp only has, he would have to hit for, he can squeeze in 2 pings, but he would need to draw additional burn in that instance. So he'd Flame Strike first. So there's a real out. Kinda.
I love your optimism. You're like, I thought I was the optimistic one when I'm casting with the likes of Lorinda, and
trading away the 1/1 lowers your chance for the friendly bartender.
I'm not sure whether that would be on Orange's mind.
Orange is assuming that he is going to lose if the burn's there anyway. Rolling friendly bartender is fairly unlikely. And the burn is all there.
Burn is all there. This is nice for Zummp. A very, very well-played game. I love it when we have games where someone uses something outside of Hearthstone, if you know what I mean. He just used mind games to win that one. Orange, in theory, missed lethal. Of course, it wasn't a miss lethal. It was just a read, a very difficult read to make because of how well played that was by Zummp. He ties it up 2-2, and now we go into Jade Druid from Orange versus this kind of hybrid Freezy Mage from Zummp. Naturally, we lean towards the Jade Druid.
Right, and Jade Druid has a definite edge, has the ability to shut down the early aggression, the ability to pressure, and the ability to heal. But the most important thing to note about this entire thing, only 1 copy of Earthen Scales in Orange's Jade Druid. So a little bit less healing than some of the other Jade Druids have. Double Feral Rage still, so you got your 16 from there, but only having 1 Earthen Scales can be a little bit expensive in this particular matchup.
Definitely can, and we can see Archmage Antonidas there for Zummp as well. It's a fantastic way of generating a whole lot of fireballs to be able to rip through any armor that Orange has gained. And the fact that he's only got the 1 Earthen Scales as well, not only is it something that doesn't synergize with the Auctioneer, but it also means you have to save that for the right time. You have to wait for those Jades to be very big before you play it, and that may give Zummp the time to put the burn damage in first.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just use your Earthen Scales for cycling like a lot of Jade Druids do in some instances with gadgets and Auctioneer. And it has to be coming down at the ultimate end game, so it's a card that's going to be dead in your hand until that point. But not a lot of pressure here for Zummp. He really wanted to find that Mana Worm. Mana Worm starts are so important to be able to actually beat Jade Druid. And Orange's hand is really good. He can just start ramping up and then ramp again, play the Behemoth, holding on to the coin and the Innervate to be able to cycle with gadgets and Auctioneer, allowing him to go infinite really quickly if he finds that gadgets in.
Holding on to the Feral Rage as well, not using that to trade because that Feral Rage armor is actually more important now that the Earthen Scales is gone. Both the Feral Rages for 16 armor may be very prominent in this matchup.
Yeah, and the counterspell is pretty dead right now because there's the coin in Orange's hand still. But playing the Ice Block, just because there's nothing else to do, maybe it forces Orange to use the coin, and then you can get a spot where counterspell is actually useful. But I anticipate Orange to read this as an Ice Block. Just play the... oh, maybe not. I mean, he's getting tripped up by the secrets.
Like, that's going to be playing on his mind.
Yeah, he misread the last secret, so now he's doubting himself a little bit. Going with Coin Jade Blossom.
This Zummp guy, hard to read.
Yeah. Oh, he's going for the max tempo here now. Okay. I like this. Those are some huge Jades that he's being able to get out there, and it doesn't mess up his curve that much because he gets the Behemoths out there. The one instance that it hurts him in is if he draws Gadgets and Auctioneer now, it's not going to offer additional cycle. So he's going to have a harder time at drawing towards that additional healing, which can be a big deal. So I don't know if it's actually worth this kind of extension here. This is a lot of cheap spells gone out of the way. He needs to find Nourish now. Gadgets and Auctioneer is not good enough.
Yeah, Orange is just trying to go down the tempo beatdown route of, okay, I'm going to play 2 Jade Behemoths in a row, get out a 4-4 Jade at some point, hope I draw into something else that I can continuously put on the board that you can't answer. Yes, okay, you could freeze me.
Yeah, that's what he's probably going to end up happening once the Jades start really getting out of control. The draw is the most important facet of this matchup. Yeah, having card draw, having cheap spells to make Gadgets and Auctioneer be a viable out is very important so that you can find your healing, you can make your Jade Golems big enough to where that you can get the value out of the Earthen Scales.
I suppose the good thing for Zummp is the fact that he has Frost Nova and Doomsayer in hand. If these Jades do get out of hand, he has an option to just try and refill.
Right, he's probably going to look to try and do that on around turn 6, so he can try and hit the Archmage Antonidas the turn after, you get that down on an empty board. That's a very reasonable way to win this matchup.
And we've seen Discover Mage beat Jade Druid this tournament, which is already relatively difficult to do. Still favored for Jade just because of the armor generation, but you have Medivh. This is closer to a Freeze Mage than the Discover Mage, but is Archmage, as you say, is the reason why I'm thinking Zummp has a chance here.
Yeah, that's one of the big deals for sure. And also just having more time than the Discover Mage to close out the game over the top. The Frost Novas allow you to squeeze in a bunch of burn while not dying. So you get a bunch of extra turns to launch stuff at your opponent's face. Druid's removal is really bad. So you can get later on like Firelands Portal plus Frost Nova, and then the minion gets to connect afterwards, making each Firelands Portal about 10 damage, which can be really, really good.
Zummp probably hoping he can hit a Nourish with this counter spell.
Oh, yeah.
As well.
If he gets into a situation where, you know, Orange only has minions in his hand and needs the Nourish, then he could win that way as well. But the Jade Idol can come out here to stop the counter spell.
And Orange won't feel too sad. Of course, he has another Jade Idol in the deck. I've seen some Jade Druids recently only run one Jade Idol, which confused me at first, and I understood the premise behind it. Try and make room for some more important cards in their eyes, but I really like the ability to just shuffle as well as build Jades bigger from the start.
Yeah, Jade Idol is one of the highest win rate Jade cards in the game. Being able to ramp your Jades for 1 mana is cheaper than all of the other effects. Jade Spirit, for example, is like stat-wise, it's 4 mana, you're kind of paying for a 2-drop, so, or 2.5 drop. So, like, the Jade Idol is just a lot better, mana efficiency-wise.
There's the Doomsayer Frost Nova coming out turn 6, just as you predicted, just in case he does. Well, not only top deck Archmage, but the board was getting a little bit out of control. It's also a decent mana situation where you're hoping that Orange won't have the answer to a Doomsayer. And turns out he didn't. There's a lot of burn in the hand.
Needs
a whole lot of nothing to put on the board.
Alexstrasza, yeah. He was hoping to either hit Archmage Antonidas or 2 Firelands Portals here that he could use to develop the board. There are like nothing before turn 7 that this Mage deck has that can really develop the board. So that's why the timing there is so crucial. If you do it earlier, then you go into your 6 mana turn, and there are no 6 drops and no 5 drops in the deck. The only minions are 2 drops and 7 drops. And Mana Worms.
And potential Mana Worms, yeah. And Archanologist, I think he's got 1 more of those as well.
Yeah.
But Zummp looks like he's taking the route of, I can't wait around.
I think he's trying to bluff a Firelands Portal.
For what reason would he be bluffing a Firelands Portal then?
So that Orange gets afraid of potentially playing out a 3-5.
Okay. I mean, Zump's mind games have been on point so far. I can understand the reasoning behind it.
Maybe just make Orange miscount the amount of damage in Zump's hand. But yeah, that was definitely a bluff of a Firelands Portal. He's pretending that Frostbolt there is Firelands Portal. And he's saying, I don't want to commit it onto the board because I'm playing for value, which is definitely not what his hand is doing. His hand is playing for the exact opposite of value.
Yep.
He is playing the burn plan 100% of the time. So trying to just give some mixed signals there.
I love it. I absolutely love it from Zummp. Quickly becoming one of my favorite players at this tournament just from the mind games he's been trying. I mean, they are mind games that several players do go for anyway, but bluff play is always something that intrigues me.
That's the second Jade Idol from Orange being used to create a minion. The first one was counterspelled. This one creates a minion. He no longer has the ability to go infinite. But that's usually pretty okay in this matchup, and especially when the Mage deck doesn't really have all that much burn.
Didn't we see the situation happen earlier as well, where someone else actually put 2 Jade Idols onto the board rather than shuffle them, and it was against Was it against Zummp? And it was a freeze mage. And actually, we saw the concede come out quite early when fatigue could have possibly come into it. I don't know if it was Zummp, but it was definitely a freeze mage that was in play.
That was in the other side of the bracket with the guy that's currently in the finals, waiting for the challenger here.
Espamito?
Espamito, yeah. He conceded a little bit prematurely in that game, I think. Not realizing that both idols had been played.
Well, Zummp should have that read, however.
Yes, and that's probably why he's clearing minions here. He's kind of diverted from the burn plan, and he's like, hey, can't go infinite anymore. Maybe I can just kill all your stuff. So setting up to try and do that, as well as just trying to set up to have a good Archmage Antonidas on the following turn. Orange has one card. If he doesn't find Nourish, he's going to be running out of gas. Gadgets and Auctioneer cannot be used to refill your hand if you have no cards in your hand to begin with.
If he does find Nourish, however,
oh, and it's fantastic.
He's in a fantastic spot. Aya is also pretty tasty.
Yeah. That is a good card.
There's a lot of damage coming towards Zump's face. He's also already used one Frost Nova, used the Doomsayer in conjunction with it too. Could do with Alexstrasza.
Yup, that hurts. 15 comes back at you if you Flame Strike. Ugh.
Is there a game plan where you can possibly... No, you can't. I'm thinking, how does he win this game? Like, he's thinking of burn. I mean, could Archmage into a Frostbot onto the 7/7 and you're still popped? No, not quite.
He's got to go for the clear plan, so he's freezing some of the minions here, trying to stop the damage from coming in. He doesn't have some of the standard removal tools to make this plan work, though, which is an issue with his deck. He's got extra burn in his deck, but he's cut things like Meteor. He's cut Blizzards to allow him to have this more freeze magey focused deck. And that costs him the ability to play this kind of game as well as a standard Discover Mage.
It's somewhat of a whiff from Orange, however.
Yeah, dealing 4 damage to your own minion, not really stellar. But it is something that he can use to feed his gadgets in once he finally finds it.
Just pushing as much damage as possible now. It means that if Zummp is to just freeze off Orange's 8/8 here, he'll still be able to finish him off with the Fandral. So we may have to just Frostbolt into ping.
Does that win you the game?
Probably not.
Right, so that's what he's thinking now. He could take the gamble with the Archmage Antonidas, go Archmage Antonidas Frostbolt, bluff that he has Alexstrasza to heal himself in his hand, and then maybe Orange tries to kill the Archmage Antonidas instead of popping the block out of fear of Alexstrasza. I guess he would never do that because he's got the 8/8 to trade anyway.
Zump's used both Frostbolts at this point if he does use this one, so he's not even got a situation where he can play the Archmage and then freeze Orange's face to stop any incoming damage to pop him at 1.
Yeah.
He's in a really tough spot.
Continuing the game plan of clearing all of the threats.
Oh.
Hey, sometimes you win. Easiest flare of your life. You got to do it with no cards in hand here. You don't want to give the mage the chance to just Alexstrasza itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you're just thinking of it as a 7/5, putting it on the board or possibly putting it on the board.
Ooh,
and
pops the block.
At least pop the block. And make this Yogg bigger as well. Well, there we go. There's a way to pop the block.
Right, he pops it at 2, unfortunately for him, though, so Zummp is still alive. Or not threatened by lethal in the immediate. Orange does have the possibility to find an overload card, though, and a lot of those will be killing Zummp.
Yeah, Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, Lava Burst, Doomhammer, the Claws.
A lot of options for Orange, and the potential to be heading towards the grand final. If all he needs is 1 damage from this overload, and there it is, it's going to be the Lava Burst to send him all the way to be competing against Espamito in the final. It's going to be Sweden versus Spain. A long-fought match for Orange, but a very well-played one.
Fantastic match, I have to say. I was impressed with Zump's performance so far, and he didn't, well, you know, disappoint in this match as well. The fantastic counterspell on turn 3 and the hold up with the ice block was key in that match. And honestly, I'm just impressed that someone has the balls to do that.
It's a fantastic bluffing game that he played. I was speaking very high regard throughout the series of how he did that. Yeah, could Orange have made that read? Yes, he probably could have. Was it a difficult one to make? Yes, a very difficult one to make.
It's very difficult because if he goes for the evolve first and then there's no counterspell, he cannot use the Bloodlust the same turn.
Yeah.
So it's a huge risk, but at the same time, you go for the win, and I feel like that was the correct decision, right, Firebat?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was definitely the correct decision to try and use the Bloodlust that turn, try and close out the game, because after that, the board was going to be frozen every turn.
Exactly. So we have now both finalists in place. We have Orange, we have Espomito, so we have a European final. Well, not really a surprise.
Wow. I mean, it's a European tournament. There's not that many North American representatives here. It's just the law of numbers.
That's true. Well, we had Reynard.
Well, okay.
Funnily enough, Reynard was my pick to win this tournament. I don't even remember in the pre-game. I was like, yeah, I think Reynard could win this.
He disappointed you pretty fast.
Yeah, he did. He dropped out.
Yeah, but first place, $7,500, 15 points for HCT qualifiers. And then second place is $3,500.
Wow.
Still a lot of cash. What is really cool about this tournament is that the top 16 players are getting cash prizes.
Right.
So it's a little bit of help to attend more tournaments, to be more stable in the environment, especially when consistency is key.
Yeah, I like the prize pool spread. I think it's definitely good to reward people through making it through that gauntlet that is the Swiss portion. If you've made it through that, you're a very solid player. There's no doubt about that. So you deserve some reward. So I like how much they spread out the prize pool, reward consistency over just rewarding only the guy that gets first place.
And I like what Lorinda was bringing up as well. It's not only is it rewarding you, but it's also money that you can use to come to another DreamHack, potentially to get to top 8 next time and to get recognized even more and build up your Hearthstone kind of repertoire, as it were, and be noticed, maybe picked up by a sponsor as well.
Yeah, exactly. Book the Scandic Elmia hotel 6 months in advance because it's full always.
Yeah.
That's actually a thing here. Also very important to make a recap of the entire tournament before it actually ends, because we had 200 players in place here for the 9 rounds of Swiss. 20 people actually on the wait list. So here we go. Here's the bracket. This is the top 16 of the entire tournament. An amazing storyline, which I'll be repeating time after time, is MP, who was actually on the wait list for the tournament, went here even without a confirmation that he can play, and look at that. He ended up in the top 16. But who was like your surprise in this bracket when you saw it first time?
The biggest surprise for me in this bracket, I guess all of the new faces. I'm always surprised to see new players that I don't know too much about, because I follow the Hearthstone scene pretty, I'd say, aggressively. So
Wow.
I know most people in the scene pretty well. And seeing, Zummp perform as well as he's performed, I never heard of him up until this point, and he's a name I'm going to be watching in future events. Psycho as well played exceptional, so another name I'm going to be looking out for. And then Espomito in the finals. People were telling me on Twitter, hey, you should watch this guy, and look at him now.
Yeah. What about you, Gaskin?
Zummp really impressed me, but I mean, Zanananan was probably one of my favorite players this tournament. I mean, not just for his fantastic name, but really showing that he's deserved of reaching that top 16. Had a lot of help from his international teammate Zorkthar to build his decks, and now maybe he can start climbing up the scales, and maybe we'll see his name a little bit more as well. Hopefully.
And then we can always say Zananana all the time in cast.
Yeah. Exactly. So 3 days of Hearthstone, and it all comes down to the one match that we'll be watching in just few minutes. Actually, when you think about it, the 2 players that are standing right now in front of that, beautiful desk with the PCs is like 2% of the entire tournament. That's almost like the legend portion of the ladder.
Okay.
Right?
So are you calling them legends?
Well, they can be legends of this tournament, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it, 200 people turned up, only 2 are remaining. And on one last guy, Orange or Espomito will be the new DreamHack champion. Actually, a pretty cool thing to put aside your name, right?
Yeah, joining a long list of players, a long list of fantastic players, actually. Mitsuhide was here, had the chance to get the title again. Unfortunately, didn't even manage to make it out of Swiss. But it's definitely a prestigious title to hold.
Definitely. All right, guys, before the final, we'll have to make a short break. Well, because Oren just played a grueling series and he has to also think about how to approach the final, so it's fair to make a short break. And then we'll just go straight into the grand final here at DreamHack Summer. So stay tuned. We'll be back after those messages.